Yeah, so wait until like 10 past 6 because there's people. Yeah. But if you have questions, I'm happy to kind of answer specific stuff. You don't have to.
I do.
Okay.
Okay, so I really talked to the teams about the undo functionality,
Mhm.
and I understand the double assignments and how it flips.
Yeah.
I'm not the best at debugging. So I
Okay.
don't fully understand, like, I have it written down, I don't understand how to use it. Does that kind of make sense?
Maybe. Let's maybe kind of redo it, I guess, right? So we have add. That takes two add. And we start out with just current value, and this just does current value plus equals to add. So to initialize. Twice. So this would be 12, right? Because plus 5 plus 7. So what we want to do now is we want to say, I want to be able to do undo, which means that I want to be able to say undo. And the effect of that is that this should be 5. So the way I approach it is I say, I'm going to have another value, which is previous value. And if I keep previous value always updated, then in undo, I can just say, well, set current value to previous value. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, okay. So here's how it would go. So initially, current value would be 0. And then previous value would be whatever. In practice, I'll set it to like something. So then the next time current value will become 5, and then previous value would become 0 because previous value is the previous current value. And then current value will become 12 and previous value will become 5. And then when I do undo, what I want is I want to take the previous value, that's whatever it is right now, and put it in current value.
Well, see, never happens.
Yeah. So that will make it so that current value will become 5. So the next question is, okay, like what if I do undo twice? And there's choices about what to do there. I can say, well, maybe what I want is I want for the previous value to get restored again if I do undo, so that it would be like 5, 12, and then 5 back again. Right. So in that case, what I want the previous value to be here is 12, so that if I do undo again, they just switch again. That is what. Yeah. 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 Okay. So I think it makes sense now, but anyway, I'll kind of complete it. So now I need to be keeping track of previous value as well. So I'll have previous value and I'll initialize it to whatever, none, for example. So something that's not, won't be mistaken for a number. And then anytime that I do add, I update current value, and I also now need to update the previous value. All right, so the way I do it is I'll just say current value, comma, previous value, and then I'll just list out what I want current value to be and what I want previous value to be. So current value would be what? It would just be current value plus 2 add. And previous value would be the old current value. So that does it. So now inside of undo, so again, if we're doing this scheme where we just switch them places, then we just switch them places, right? So copy and paste this, and I can just very quickly just say I want them to switch places, and that would be the end of it, right? So current value with previous value. Or I can just think about it the way I thought about line 17, where I would say, what do I want current value to be? Well, I want it to be previous value because that's what undo means. And then what I want previous value to be, well, I want it to be that if I undo again, I get previous value again. So that's why previous value goes into current value, and then current value goes into previous value. Cool. We're broadcasting. Yeah, I think yeah. Yeah, so let's wait until like 10 past. Hello. All right, it's 10 past. So let's do lab 3. I think this is like a relatively short one. So the first one is undo 2. So the idea with undo 2 is you want to be able to go 2 steps back rather than just 1 step back, right? So how do we do it? So again, you can just look at the structure here and say, what is the information that they need in order to be able to go 2 steps back? And the answer is, well, I need to know what was the current value 2 steps ago, right? So let's update it. Let's do undo 2 first. So I need the current value, I need the previous value, and I need the value before previous. Right. And then what does undo 2 mean? It means go back 2 steps. So current value would be previous value 2. Right? So previous value is what? So previous value is the value that just used to be in current value, right? So that means current value. And then previous value 2 would be the value that's the one before last. So currently we made it be previous value 2. Before it was current value, and before that it was previous value, right? So that's kind of all it takes, is kind of to logic it out. I think it's not like super easy the first time you look at it. So what you might do is you might just like do an example. So if the current values evolve, like, it's like 5, and then it's 12, and then it's 20. and this is current, and this is previous, and this is previous to, then you want to say, okay, like if I do undo 2, what should current become? Well, that should become 5, right? And then what should previous become? Well, that's whatever came just now, so that would be 20. And what should previous to be? Well, before 5 and before 20, what was it? Well, it's 12. So that was probably a little bit fast, right? But that's the logic, right? It's like you say, what do I want current to become? Just like in terms of like, what is the number that I want it to become? What is the number that I want previous to become? What is the number that I want previous to become? And then you can think back to how do I write it using variables? And of course, there are kind of counterexamples where it doesn't work out, but usually this kind of thing would work. So you want, obviously, all the numbers to be different. They're not, you'd be in trouble. So that's kind of one part of it. So the other part of it is now that I'm using previous value 2 in undo 2, that means that I also need to be using it everywhere else because I need to be updating it in every other function, or it's not up to date, so I can't use it, right? So that means that here I need to also say what previous value 2 would be. And here it's what? Yeah. Yeah, so prav val, because we have, current, the one just before, the one before that. So we just basically move one step forward. So current is something new, and then prav is the old current, and then prav 2 is the old prav. Yeah. So then over here, again, need to update it. So need to say what prav val 2 is going to be. So here we are doing undo. So undo basically goes back to the previous value. So the current value is previous value is current value, previous value 2 actually stays is actually the one before last. So this is where I want an example. So if it was like 5, so just copy and paste this. So we went 20, so we went from 5, so we went from 5 and then we went to 12 and then we went to 20, right? So current will become previous. So this is 12. Previous is 20. And then before it was 20, it was 12. So that would be I actually already let's just undo. So that would be prav val again. Make sense? So again, just like there's not like an easy way to do it. You just kind of write out the example and then you logic out what it's supposed to be. So one more thing that is worth pointing out is that I did multiple assignments here for a good reason. So if I didn't do a multiple assignment, I would be in trouble because here I'm saying current val is prev val. And if I first say current val equals prep val, then I've overwritten current val, so I can't use it anymore. So that's why kind of simultaneously kind of swap them rather than say first on line 29, current value equals previous value, and then previous value equals current value. That would make them all be the same.
Sure. In undo two, I mean, I just walked in, so maybe this is not what you do, but you know how you set current value to previous value to, which makes sense, but why did we set previous value to current value in undo two?
In undo two. So when we're doing undo two, so people now. So imagine that we're in this situation. So it used to be 5, then it became 12, and now it's 20.
Right.
So undo 2 goes 2 steps back. So that means that current used to be 20 should become 5. So that's previous 2. And then previous used to be 12, and now it should be current. So that becomes 20. And then previous 2 is whatever happened before 5. So it's now 5, and then it used to be 20, and then before that it used to be 12. So this is the 12. Make sense? Cool. All right. Is everyone fine with this, or do people want me to repeat this example? Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So we're now doing this. So we want drink coffee and study. Copying and pasting this. So initialize is given. And let's do a main function. A main block. Okay. So here are the rules. So you get 5 nulls per minute of study if they haven't drunk coffee right before the study session, and 10 if they have. However, if you have 2 cups of coffee over the span of 2 hours, then you get 0 nulls per hour from there. Okay. So let me copy this. So I'm going to try to model how I would do it if I just read the rules, which effectively is true because I wrote those rules like several days ago. All right. So I'll start by just doing study. Right. So here there's, I guess, 3 situations, right? So there is 5 nulls per minute, there's 10 nulls per minute, and there is 0. So I'll write my custom get nulls per minute function. Doesn't need any information here, right? It just looks at the current situation. So here, the variables are already defined for you. It's a little bit up to you how you interpret them, but too much coffee probably means the rule about 2 coffees in 2 hours has applied, right? So if too much coffee is true, then that means that nulls per hour is 0, right? And I can just say return 0 unconditionally. There's nothing else, right? So the next thing is it 5 or is it 10, right? So here I have kind of a similar situation with the last coffee time and what I would interpret as the time before last that I had coffee, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, okay, I have my current time, I have my last coffee time, and I'm not allowed. Sorry, so the tired with coffee is not here. Yeah, so 2 cups, so more than 2 cups of coffee in the span of 2 hours, then we're tired with coffee. Okay. So let's do the rule about too much coffee. So I have last coffee time, I have last coffee time too, and I also have current time. So I'll just write down the example. So let's say that that current time is 1:30, and then last coffee time is, let's say, 1:10, and then last coffee time, let's say, is 100. So if I'm drinking coffee right now, then that triggers the too much coffee. Right. On the other hand, if this is like 30, then it doesn't. So the only situation where too much coffee will be triggered in case too much coffee is not already true is if I'm drinking coffee right now. Drinking coffee only happens in drink coffee. Right, so let me go here and write this. So I'll say so here there is a trick to it, right? So you can say, okay, last coffee time 2 is going to be before last coffee time. And last coffee time is going to be before this. So I can just ask, what is the difference between this time and this time? And if that's less than 2 hours, then that means that I had 2 or more coffees in the span of 2 hours. Does that make sense? So, okay, so I'll just do that. So I'll say if current time minus last coffee time 2. So here it says over the span of 2, so over the span of 2 hours, so less than 120. Then too much coffee is true. So here I'm updating too much coffee. So too much coffee needs to be global. Right? Because otherwise too much coffee would just be the local variable. Much coffee, always the case that if you want to communicate information to outside of the function and you're setting a variable in order to do that, it has to be that you're setting a global variable. Okay. So what else do we need to do in drink coffee? Yeah. So in fact, all of that, right? So I'm drinking coffee. That's my last opportunity to update the times where kind of the current time and also the last coffee time and also the last coffee time too. Right. So what I'm gonna do before I do any of that is I'll update the last coffee time and the last coffee time too. So I'll say global last coffee time and global last coffee time too. And this is very much like the undo, right? So last coffee time is going to be current time. And last coffee time too is going to be last coffee. Make sense?
The last coffee time was essentially like the previous of the previous value.
Yeah. All right.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? What's the reason you're doing the double assignment for?
So in here you didn't strictly speaking have to. If you did first last coffee time 2 equals last coffee time, and then you did last coffee time equals current time, that would be fine. If you did it the other way though, that would be a problem, because if you said last coffee time equals current time, then you couldn't have now said last coffee time 2 equals last coffee. Well, you could say it, but that would set all of them to current time. If you change the order, then that would turn out to be fine. If you do it using multiple assignment, then you don't need to worry about it. Make sense? Cool. So, all right. So that gives us the too much coffee, and it updates this. So there is an assumption, by the way, built in here that we don't drink like 2 coffees at the same time, that we always do stuff in between. Okay. So here we're saying, okay, so if too much coffee returns 0 and too much coffee now works. So now we need to ask, okay, so when is it 5? So it's going to be 5 if they haven't drunk coffee right before the study session. So we need to know whether they've drunk coffee just before the study session, which is the same as saying is last coffee time the same as current time, right? So we're going to say if last coffee time is equal to current time, so that means that they drank coffee just now. Then we return 10. And else we return 5. That's it. So now we have our study. So we have nulls per minute is get nulls per minute. And now we just update the nulls number. So I'll need to update nulls and I'll need to update current time. So nulls is going to be nulls per minute times minutes. And current time is going to be updated by minutes. So that's pretty much it. So what's kind of the process here? Again, just think about what is the information that I need before I update all my variables. How do I update all my variables, right? So here, what is the information that I need for study? And then with study, so study doesn't let me update the coffee drinking. It just lets me update the time and the nulls, right? So would be nulls, and would be current time. And then you just think about, okay, like, given this information, how do I use it in order to update the nulls and update the current time? So similarly for drink coffee. So what's the information I need? Well, like, it's all here, right? And then last time I had coffee and possibly too much coffee. Right. So if you think about it in this kind of systematic way, where like, what is the information I need? What do I need to update? That should make things easier. This one is a little bit different in that it doesn't really update information, right? It just takes information about where you had too much coffee in the past, whether last coffee time is equal to current time, and it returns the appropriate nulls per minute, depending on what the situation is. Yeah, not sure what to focus on. I can make it smaller, but that's a trade-off as well. And is that making sense? Question? Yeah. Yeah, again, kind of, I think with a lot of those things, kind of easier said than done, right? So if you find that, you know, I think it's natural to look at it sometimes and say, you know, like, it makes sense after the fact, but that's different from being able to come up with it, which is just true. So again, kind of what I would try to do, I think, is just try to do it from scratch, kind of haven't seen solutions.
Would this be similar to like an exam problem?
I mean, possibly there's, I mean, like, what it's really similar to is project one,
Right.
but so yeah, like, there are, you know, occasionally midterm and exam problems which are kind of inspired by the labs and the projects, you know. In fact, often. And of course, you know, there's a range of difficulty always.
Ask questions about the project.
Yeah.
Um.
Actually, sorry, let me check if I'm done with, was that the last question? I think it was. Yeah.
Really specific, like in the file that we posted.
Okay.
And your one sensitive were.
Would it be this one? Yeah, so the rule is that after 180 minutes, the health point calculation changes. So here they've run for 20 minutes and then for 170 minutes. So the calculation for the first 180 minutes is different from the calculation for the last 10 minutes. So here you get 3 per minute for the first 20, and then you continue getting 3 per minute for the 160, and then you get 1 per minute for the last 10.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah.
So, for this star can be taken function,
Okay.
that one we never actually call, right? I mean, in the, if the main block, we're just calling it in one of our functions in order to. So the user.
So I believe star can be taken as one of the required functions. Let me check. So star. Yeah, so star can be taken as one of the required functions. So it happens that maybe I didn't call it in the main block that I supplied to you. However, it could and will be called in the testing code.
It seems that it's been called, but it hasn't been called.
No, so star can be, so unless there is a job that the function is supposed to do, like for example, perform activity is supposed to have an effect. Star can be taken is not supposed to have an effect, right? So star can be taken, returns a value, but it shouldn't be changing any global variables. So, and that means that there can never be an assumption that it was or was not called, because that assumption wouldn't affect it.
Then can you go to the test cases? I just wanna ask about one. It was test 8. It says 3 minus 2, right? So is that because the star?
Test 8. So 10 times 3 so 10 times 3 minus 2. I believe that's not so yes. So here there was offer star and then perform activity running. So for the first 10 minutes, the star was being used. So that's why for the first 10 minutes, you're getting 1 hidden per minute. And then for the other 10 minutes, it's minus 2.
Saying star can be taken to verify that the offer star has been used.
Well, like what you do internally is up to you.
Oh, so, okay, yeah, that's what my question
Right.
is, like, do we call it internally?
Yeah, you can, right? Yeah.
But like in your test cases, you might call that.
Well, I might call it separately just because I'm requiring it. So not in fact might, like
Oh,
will. I call it separately as just any other function that's supposed to compute something.
oh.
Right. So I don't have anything else, but so I'm happy to kind of answer questions until my other group comes in at 7. Yeah, so I will kind of repeat what I said to, I think, maybe some of you in office hours yesterday, which is that what you really don't want is to be writing a lot of code without testing it as you write it. So kind of figure out the smallest bit of code that you can write that's going to make progress, and then test that it actually worked, and then kind of move on. And that's because, like the logic in project 1, if you break it down piece by piece, it's not that complicated. However, if you look at it as a whole, it's actually quite complex. So it's difficult. Like I cannot hold it in my head all at once. I need to just say, I'm going to be focusing on this part separate. And part of it is I broke things down into functions. So I'm making you, for example, write the function start and the taken, even though, one might imagine that you wouldn't need to do it in order to make those examples work. But like even then, like something that I see often is people writing those functions and then kind of not using them, which you can do it, I don't care, but it's not the best thing because well, I mean, like waste, so not I mean waste of space, but space is free. It's like waste of kind of cognitive effort because you're basically trying to fit the entire logic into one function, and that's just difficult to do. Say it. It for grading purposes, it is the autograder. We also have a TA go through the submissions and give comments. So we used to also grade people on style and stuff. I stopped doing that just because there were like so many arguments about kind of what's good style and what's not good style. That and like I'm fine with arguments. It's just that like a lot of them were reasonable, and I decided that it's kind of like not really possible to kind of come to consensus about kind of what's reasonable style and then to communicate it to both the teams and the states.
On how efficient our code is, or
Yeah, so occasionally, yeah, so not in project.
oh.
You are not allowed to change the parameters in any of the required functions because the required functions, we call them assuming that you haven't changed anything. If you like, you can change their names if you really have kind of strong preferences about kind of what to name the parameters. But so that is not something that would matter to us because we're just passing, numbers and strings. But I would not recommend it. I would recommend just keeping everything as is just to be safe.
The variables, do we have to keep the same variable names or can we chat?
No, you can do what you want. Again, like I wouldn't mess about with it, but you can if you want.
Because I saw them file after I already started.
Yeah.
So I like
Yeah.
different variables.
Yeah. Well, there's always find and replace.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah. So is there anything else people want me to review or anything?
So when it says that, basically, you know how it's like 180 is like when it's gonna keep adding 3 heat-ons if it's till 180 minutes.
Mhm.
Does
For
that
running.
is that 180 including 180 or like just less than 180?
So this is for it. So let me answer it unambiguously. The most evens you can add this way is 3 times 180.
Okay. Okay. Then so anytime you define like 2 hours, 180 minutes, it's always up to and including.
So, I mean, I would say the other way because you start with minute 0 and then you go up to minute 179. And then if you're at 180, then that's more, right?
Yeah.
The first one, the struggling with the lives and stuff project one, what would you recommend doing for extra practice? I know the warm up. At the beginning has some practice, is that what you recommend or is it?
Well, and I mean, you know, like if you feel that the warm up helps, then for sure. I would recommend making sure that you can do the lab from scratch. And I would recommend kind of looking at, so like if you can't do it from scratch on your own, kind of look at the solutions, look at something else for a while, or think about something else for a while, just to make sure that you haven't just memorized it. And then try to do it from scratch. Right. Cool. Yeah, so I'll have some I'll announce some office hours like Friday night and I guess like Saturday afternoon. So there's gonna be an opportunity to talk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay.